All right. So this section deals with conditional statements. That's going to be very, very common here. And a conditional statement is basically described with if-then. If you see a statement that has an if and then a then somewhere, you know that's conditional statement. So if you have two different highlighters, I would strongly suggest you do that. But I start with very simple statements here. If today, so this is the first conditional statement. If today is Wednesday, I know it's not Wednesday today, it's Friday. I can't change that, right? But if today is Wednesday, if somebody were to say, if today is Wednesday, then yesterday was Tuesday, that is a conditional statement. And this is actually a true statement no matter what you do, okay? You can never change the veracity of whether or not this is true. But if today were to be Wednesday, then we know for sure yesterday was Tuesday, okay? You can't lie about that. So I started with a statement that is always true. So we break this down. Whatever follows the if is what we call the hypothesis with the letter P, right? And then is denoted with an arrow, okay? So there's an hypothesis, and if whatever happens to it, there's a conclusion that follows. So this statement right here, folks, using P and Q and the arrow, it really is summarized by this little notation on the side. If you ever see P and an arrow Q, you should immediately think, oh, that's a conditional statement that's saying if P is true, then Q will follow. Okay? Just stay with me. In order to determine the veracity of the original statement, we dig a little deeper by forming converse, inverse, contrapositive, and biconditional statements based on the original. Okay? We're going to base everything on the original. And I know you're scratching your heads. Yes, I was thinking of you when I was making this lesson, right? What? Just stay with me. I am very sure that after today you're going to hear the word converse. The converse is true. Somebody in the radio, or you're going to listen to a podcast, and it will come up at some point after today. You're going to notice it. And here's what the converse is. Let me make sure I keep this one. This is the original if-then. The converse statement is really flipping the hypothesis with the conclusion. So we're going to flip this. We're going to bring this over here and that part over here. And that's how you see this. The Q is in front, then the P is after. So it's saying if Q, then P. So this is how we write it. If yesterday was Tuesday, so right, that's the Q part earlier. So if yesterday was Tuesday, comma, then today is Wednesday. So as you can tell, the Q came up front, the P is now after. So using those same colors that I had up there, I'm just going to make sure you understand. The converse, if you say the converse, you just take what you were given, the original, and just flip it. You flip the P with the Q. And honestly, sometimes that's all an exam has. They give you a statement, and they're like, write the converse of that statement. Honestly, folks, 1 mark, boom. One minute. If you know what you're supposed to do, you move on. And you have your study sheet. You don't need to memorize this. You just have to have this on your study sheet. And I will summarize it on the next page. Keep going. The next one is what we call the inverse statement. We negate the hypothesis and the conclusion of the original. There's the word negate. We're saying no to it. So to negate, simply add the word not in front of each part. And I'm upset about all these different versions of this. But anytime you see basically anything on top of a letter, it means not. So you could have this, you could have this, right? Like, what is that? Or you could have this. So I will just tell you this. If there's anything weird happening to a letter, just assume that that's saying not. All right? So if the province invents a fourth one while I'm talking right now, you just say, oh, that's probably not. That's probably the safest way to do it. So remember, it's P, Q, just like the original, in the same order. So we're going to keep it this way, but we're going to stick a not in front of both of those parts. That's all inverse is saying. So let's take that and write, if today is not Wednesday, then yesterday is not Tuesday. Yikes, I'm running out of space here. Okay, so the not, right, this is basically turning P into not P, and Q is now also not Q. Okay, so you still have orange and then green. So basically, folks, we always go back to the original when we rewrite it in these other formats. Yeah, go ahead. Contrapositive. It says to flip and negate the original statement. Flip and negate. So watch this. Right? So you see that P came over here, Q came over there, and both of them get a not in front of it. And so these are just the three different versions that you could expect. Okay? So, you think you could do it already? If yesterday you can go wasn't, you know that? Like you can if you want. But I'm just going to stick with the not. If yesterday was not Tuesday, make sure you follow along, ladies. Okay, you can do that later. Then, you have the whole weekend to do that. Then, today is not Wednesday. And I'm just going to shorten it there. So this part is basically not Q, and this part is not P. I think I have it somewhere in the notes, but I'll basically say this. If you hear the word con, like a con artist, you're flipping, you're not really showing your true identity, right? So con means flip, and then you have to negate it as well. And so I'm going to basically, after this, stop a little bit and let you practice this. How do you rewrite statements before I move on? Otherwise, I'm going to lose you. Last one is biconditional. Substitute if and only if. Okay? So when it's biconditional, you want if and only if in there. The statement is only true if the original and the converse is true. There are no counterexamples. We'll talk more about this later. Only true if the original and the converse is true. So watch how this goes. The if and only if kind of gets sandwiched between P and Q. So I'll say this. Today is Wednesday if and only if yesterday was Tuesday. Fun stuff, eh? You can totally do it though. Okay. So this if and only if right here turns this into what we call a biconditional. It's true both ways. Okay? Doesn't matter how you say it. You're absolutely sure both ways that this is a true statement, so we just go with it. You can rewrite it, any statement, into these categories, folks. It doesn't mean that they're going to be true. Are you listening to that part? It doesn't mean that it's going to be true. We're going to check that later on. But rewriting you should be able to do no matter what. So here's the summary of what I just did here. Come with me over to 48. I would strongly suggest you add this to your study sheet. Obviously make it way smaller. Way, way smaller. So the original conditional statement is if P then Q. So that's the notation for it. Converse, it's if Q then P. So you basically flip the original. Inverse is if not P, then not Q. So there's your notation. I just stick with one version there. Sorry guys, I'm not going to do all three. Contrapositive, you flip and negate. So the contrapositive, you think of it, it's like a morph between these two, right? There's some negating and flipping. Then you have your biconditional. P, if and only if Q, you got the arrows going both ways. Otherwise, it only ever goes to from left to right. Okay? I'm just going to let you try this now. So I have a bunch of examples there. Honestly, this could be all that they ask for on the exam when it comes to this logic stuff. And later we're going to do truth tables using this notion. So I have a bunch of if statements. I want you to write the converse, the inverse, contrapositive, biconditional. I wish I would have mixed these up on you every table. I didn't. It follows the same thing over and over. But I'll AC you and then I'll ask you for random formats. You just have to have this in front of you and you should be able to do it. Okay? So give this a try. I'm just going to get you started. After the if, that part is what I call the P, the hypothesis. And then what follows the then is what I call Q. So once you figured out P and Q, it's really just, it flows from there. What does converse mean? It means putting Q first and then go then P. So you're literally going to say, if Sandra's mom will not get upset, then Sandra cleans her room. Right? You're basically flipping that original statement. Inverse, you say not P, then not Q. Contrapositive, not Q, then not P. And biconditional, you insert if and only if into your statement. So give it a try. I'll look for the key and put it up so you can check right away. I posted the key to this, so I'm just going to say this. I don't spend tons of time on this because if it shows up, it's only 1 or 2 questions on the exam and it's very short and sweet. So I will ask you if you want to start already reviewing. I'm going to page 30 actually as I'm talking. This is starting on page 30. There's all these reviews of making Venn diagrams and finding subsets and all of that stuff is starting 30 to 36. So if you feel like you got this, you did, I would say you need to make at least 3 boxes of this worth of writing so you're very comfortable with it. On your study sheet you have that little cheat, right, the table, so you know which one goes where. But start reviewing this, please, okay? Otherwise, it might get a little overwhelming. I would say this unit is very doable if you practice, okay? Because it kind of, once you know how a Venn diagram works, you just know it, right? So please try that. Have a really good weekend.